In the mid-12th century, England, Normandy, and the wider Angevin realms were ruled not by a single kingdom, but by a sprawling empire held together through marriage, military force, and political tension. It was into this volatile world that Richard Plantagenet, later known as Richard the Lionheart, was born on September 8, 1157, at Beaumont Palace in Oxford. His father, Henry II of England, governed an empire stretching from the Scottish border to the Pyrenees. His mother, Eleanor of Aquitaine, was one of the most influential women in medieval Europe, former Queen of France, wealthy duchess, and a patron of chivalric culture. Richard's early world was not one of quiet courtly upbringing, but of ceaseless conflict. Henry II's reign was marked by rebellions, territorial disputes, and tension within his own family. Eleanor's vast Aquitanian lands were culturally distinct, steeped in the tradition of troubadours, chivalry, and aristocratic warfare. Richard spent much of his youth in Aquitaine, where he absorbed the values of southern French knightly culture, valor, personal honor, and martial prowess. These influences would shape him more than the English court ever did. From a young age, Richard showed a natural inclination for warfare. Chroniclers describe him as tall, strong, and commanding, with a fierce presence that made him both admired and feared. He trained in mounted combat, archery, strategy, and the brutal realities of medieval siege warfare. His mother encouraged the development of his political identity, fostering his loyalty toward Aquitaine rather than England. This regional allegiance later contributed to tensions within the Angevin dynasty. By his teenage years, Richard had already acquired a formidable reputation. In 1173, he joined his brothers in a major revolt against his father, an uprising fueled by ambition, resentment, and Eleanor's political maneuvering. Although the rebellion ultimately failed, Richard demonstrated exceptional military skill. He emerged as one of the most capable commanders among Henry's sons, proving himself in pitched battles, castle sieges, and the harsh realities of civil war. After the revolt, Richard was granted control over Aquitaine. But ruling the duchy was no ceremonial title. Aquitaine was unstable, filled with rebellious barons and fortified strongholds. To secure his authority, Richard launched relentless campaigns throughout the region. His actions were often brutal, earning him a reputation for both effectiveness and severity. Yet this was also the period that cemented his martial identity. The knightly culture of Aquitaine celebrated his exploits, and troubadours began referring to him in heroic terms. The world into which Richard rose was defined by shifting political alliances, dynastic conflict, and the looming influence of the Crusading movement. The call to reclaim the Holy Land resonated deeply among the European nobility, and for a warrior shaped by chivalric ideals, it offered the ultimate stage. Richard's path toward kingship and toward becoming the iconic figure known as the Lionheart had already begun.
By the late 1180s, Richard's reputation as one of Europe's most formidable young warlords was firmly established. His campaigns in Aquitaine had demonstrated his ability not only to command armies, but to suppress rebellion through decisive, often ruthless action. Chroniclers from the period describe him as a leader who fought in the front ranks, carried himself with unmatched bravery, and inspired fierce loyalty among his knights. Yet his rise to power was shaped not only by personal strength, but by the turbulence of the Angevin Empire. The political landscape of the late 12th century was defined by the rivalry between the Angevin dynasty and the French Capetian kings. Richard's father, Henry II, held more French territory than the French king himself, creating constant tension. The French monarch, Philip II Augustus, saw opportunity in the conflicts within the Angevin family, particularly the strained relations between Henry and his sons. Philip cultivated alliances with Henry's rebellious heirs, using their ambitions to undermine the Angevin regime. Richard and Philip developed a complex partnership during this time. The two princes shared mutual respect, but both understood that their cooperation was rooted in strategic necessity rather than genuine friendship. When Richard's elder brother, Henry the Young King, died in 1183, the question of succession shifted dramatically. Richard was now the most capable heir, but Henry II initially attempted to shift power toward his youngest son, John. This decision ignited another rebellion, pushing Richard to openly oppose his father. Henry II's authority weakened rapidly as Richard and Philip launched joint military pressure. In 1189, after a series of defeats and betrayals, Henry fell gravely ill. When he was presented with the list of rebels who had deserted him, the first name was his favorite son, John. Broken by this revelation and by Richard's advancing forces, Henry II died on July 6, 1189. Richard Plantagenet, age 31, became King Richard I of England. Richard's priorities as king were clear from the moment he took the throne: securing the kingdom's finances, consolidating power, and preparing to embark on the Third Crusade. The Muslim leader Saladin had captured Jerusalem in 1187, sending shockwaves through Christendom. Pope Gregory VIII issued a powerful call to arms, urging Europe's rulers to reclaim the Holy City. For a king whose identity was built around chivalric ideals and military glory, the crusade was not merely a religious obligation, it was a quest that aligned perfectly with his personal ambitions. Richard moved quickly. He raised enormous sums by selling offices, lands, and privileges, famously declaring, "I would sell London itself if only I could find a buyer." He negotiated with European rulers, secured safe passage for his armies, and strengthened fleets capable of transporting thousands of soldiers across the Mediterranean. His administrative focus during these months revealed another side of Richard. Though remembered primarily as a warrior, he demonstrated notable organizational and political skill. At the same time, Richard sought to stabilize his inheritance. He made arrangements for the governance of England during his absence, granted territories to loyal allies, and negotiated with Philip II to jointly lead the crusade. Yet tensions simmered beneath the alliance. Philip feared the growing power and popularity of Richard, but Richard mistrusted Philip's ambitions in France. These unresolved rivalries would follow them all the way to the Holy Land. In 1190, Richard the Lionheart set out from Europe with one of the most formidable crusading armies ever assembled. His journey marked the beginning of a military campaign that would cement his legacy as one of history's most famous warrior kings.
Richard's departure for the Holy Land in 1190 marked the beginning of one of the most dramatic military campaigns of the Middle Ages. His fleet, hundreds of ships carrying knights, infantry, supplies, and siege equipment, reflected the scale of his ambition. But the journey itself was perilous. Storms scattered parts of his fleet, and one contingent was driven ashore on Cyprus. What began as a logistical setback quickly turned into a strategic opportunity. At the time, Cyprus was ruled by Isaac Komnenos, a renegade Byzantine prince who had declared himself independent. When he imprisoned shipwrecked crusaders and seized their goods, Richard responded swiftly. He launched the full-scale invasion, capturing the island within weeks. Chroniclers describe the campaign as decisive and relentless, showcasing Richard's mastery of siege warfare and rapid maneuver. By June 1191, Cyprus was under Crusader control, providing a vital supply base for the Third Crusade. This conquest alone had long-term consequences, strengthening the Crusader states for centuries to come. Richard then sailed to the Levant, where the Crusader army was engaged in the prolonged siege of Acre. The city, held by Muslim defenders loyal to Saladin, had become the focal point of the conflict. After nearly 2 years of fighting, the arrival of Richard and his forces shifted the balance decisively. Using siege engines, naval bombardment, and coordinated assaults, the Crusaders finally forced Acre to surrender in July 1191. It was here that tensions between Richard and King Philip II of France erupted openly. Philip, suffering from illness and wary of Richard's growing prestige, abandoned the crusade and returned to Europe. Richard remained determined to confront Saladin directly. Leadership of the Crusader army passed firmly into his hands. The campaign that followed is remembered for its tactical brilliance. Richard demonstrated exceptional discipline, maintaining strict formations and preventing the impulsive charges that often doomed medieval armies. His most celebrated engagement came at the Battle of Arsif on September 7, 1191. As Saladin's forces harassed the Crusader march along the coast, Richard held his troops in formation despite intense pressure. Finally, when the moment was right, he ordered a counterattack. The disciplined charge, led by the Knights Hospitaller and Knights Templar, broke Saladin's line and forced a retreat. Arsif became the defining victory of Richard's career. But despite these successes, the strategic situation remained difficult. Saladin's forces were resilient, withdrawing into inland fortifications that were nearly impossible to breach. Richard advanced along the coast toward Jerusalem, but faced logistical challenges, supply shortages, harsh weather, and the impossibility of holding the Holy City even if captured. The Crusaders reached the outskirts of Jerusalem twice, but Richard ultimately refused to launch a siege he knew he could not sustain. Instead, Richard turned to diplomatic maneuvers. His negotiations with Saladin were notable for their respect and pragmatism. The two leaders, though enemies, recognized each other's military skill and statesmanship. In 1192, they reached the Treaty of Jaffa, which secured Christian access to the holy sites in Jerusalem and stabilized the coastal territories under Crusader control. Richard's performance in the Crusade made him a legend in both Christian and Muslim sources. European chroniclers praised his bravery, battlefield leadership, and unyielding will. Muslim writers described him as a formidable opponent, a man of immense courage and martial skill, earning admiration even among Saladin's supporters. These accounts laid the foundation for Richard's enduring reputation as one of the greatest warrior kings of medieval Europe. But while Richard was winning glory in the Holy Land, disaster awaited him on the journey home.
As Richard began the long journey home from the Holy Land in late 1192, he faced a Europe transformed in his absence. His relationship with King Philip II of France had collapsed completely. Philip had spent the previous months undermining Richard's authority, attacking his lands in Normandy, and supporting Richard's treacherous brother, Prince John, in a bid to seize the English throne. For Richard, the return journey was not simply a matter of going home, it was a race against political collapse. The route back to England was perilous. Winter storms pushed Richard's ships off course, forcing him to attempt a dangerous overland return through Central Europe. Disguised as a merchant, he traveled through hostile territories where various rulers had grievances against him. But his disguise failed. Near Vienna, he was recognized by agents of Leopold V, Duke of Austria, whose banner Richard had arrogantly torn down after the capture of Acre. Leopold arrested him immediately, viewing the detention of a king as both revenge and opportunity. Richard's captivity soon escalated. Leopold handed him over to the Holy Roman Emperor, Henry VI, who demanded an enormous ransom for the king's release. 150,000 marks, an astronomical sum equivalent to several years of English royal revenue. It became one of the most famous acts of imprisonment in medieval history. The ransom placed an unimaginable strain on England. Clergy and nobles were taxed heavily. gold and silver from churches were seized, and ordinary citizens contributed everything from coins to personal heirlooms. Despite the hardship, the nation rallied behind its absent king. Chroniclers note the scale of the operation with astonishment. Villages melted down silverware, monasteries emptied treasuries, and royal agents scoured the countryside for every ounce of metal they could legally or forcefully collect. While Richard languished in captivity, Philip II and Prince John worked tirelessly to ensure he never returned. Philip launched attacks in Normandy, attempting to seize Angevin castles along the Seine. John sent letters to Henry VI, urging that Richard be kept imprisoned permanently. One infamous message read, "Pay no heed to Richard's offers, for as long as he lives, you will have no peace from him." This act of treachery became one of the defining stains on John's legacy. Yet the ransom was eventually paid, and in February 1194, after more than a year in captivity, Richard was released. His return to London was met with extraordinary celebration, but there was little time for rest. Within weeks, he crossed the Channel once again, this time not to fight Saladin, but to defend his continental dominions from Philip. The conflict between Richard and Philip that followed was relentless. Richard proved himself not only a great crusader, but also a master of European warfare. He reorganized his armies, rebuilt fortifications, and launched rapid counterattacks across Normandy and Aquitaine. Chroniclers depict these campaigns as a chess match between two brilliant rivals, Philip, the calculating strategist, and Richard, the aggressive battlefield commander. Richard's efforts reversed many of Philip's gains. His most famous construction of this period was Chateau Gaillard, a massive fortress overlooking the Seine. Built with astonishing speed, it was designed to block Philip's advance toward Rouen and became a symbol of Richard's determination to secure his empire. The king himself oversaw its design, calling it one of the fairest castles in the world. By 1999, Richard had regained the upper hand. His war against Philip seemed poised to continue for years. Yet his life would end not on a battlefield, but in a small, obscure siege in the heart of Aquitaine, a sudden, almost anticlimactic conclusion to the career of one of medieval Europe's most celebrated warrior kings.
In early 1199, Richard found himself in Limousin, dealing with a rebellion by local vassals, an all-too-common occurrence in the turbulent duchy of Aquitaine. Despite being King of England and one of Europe's most renowned military leaders, Richard still spent much of his life quelling uprisings among his own nobility. One such revolt centered around the castle of Châlus-Chabrol, a small but strategically placed stronghold whose lord had reportedly uncovered a hidden treasure. Richard, always eager to assert authority and claim revenues, moved to besiege the castle personally. The siege was minor compared to Richard's previous campaigns, yet it proved fatal. On March 25, 1199, while inspecting the defenses and mocking the garrison from a position that should have been safe, Richard was struck in the shoulder by a crossbow bolt fired by a defender, traditionally identified as a young soldier named Pierre Basile. The wound seemed manageable at first, but medieval medical care was perilous. Infection set in quickly. Over the next several days, Richard's condition deteriorated. Realizing he was near death, he displayed a rare moment of clemency. He pardoned the crossbowman who had shot him, ordering that no harm come to the man. It was a final gesture of chivalric honor from a king whose life had been shaped by the ideals of knighthood. Yet despite Richard's mercy, his commanders later executed Basile in an act of retribution, highlighting the gap between Richard's personal code and the brutal realities of medieval warfare. Richard the Lionheart died on April 6, 1199, at the age of 41. His death sent shockwaves through the Angevin world. In England, where he had spent little time but had earned the loyalty of his subjects, he was remembered as a symbol of martial glory. In France, his rival Philip II famously remarked, "Now at last the earth is at peace." His body was divided according to medieval custom. His heart was interred at Rouen, his entrails buried at Châlus,
and his body laid to rest beside his father at the Royal Abbey at Fontevraud. Richard's immediate legacy was shaped by contrast. His successor, King John, lacked his charisma, military skill, and political authority. Under John's rule, the Angevin Empire collapsed rapidly, with Normandy falling to Philip II. As England's fortunes declined, Richard's memory grew brighter. Chroniclers emphasized his courage, leadership, and knightly virtues, turning him into an idealized model of kingship. In the centuries that followed, Richard's image evolved from historical monarch to legendary warrior. Medieval troubadours celebrated his bravery. Renaissance historians praised his military genius. Victorian writers transformed him into a romantic hero, especially in works like Sir Walter Scott's Ivanhoe, where Richard embodies the noble Christian king returning from Crusade. These portrayals often overlooked his harsh taxation, limited governance, and reluctance to stay in England, but they ensured his fame endured. In modern scholarship, Richard is seen as both a product and a symbol of his age. He was undeniably one of the finest battlefield commanders of the Middle Ages, commanding respect from allies and enemies alike. His leadership during the Third Crusade earned him admiration even in Muslim chronicles, where he appears as a formidable, honorable opponent. Yet Richard's reign also highlights the challenges of medieval kingship, balancing warfare with administration, managing vast territories, and navigating complex dynastic politics. Ultimately, Richard the Lionheart remains one of history's most iconic warrior kings, not because he governed wisely or ruled peacefully, but because he embodied the martial ethos of his time. His life, shaped by conflict and ambition, continues to captivate historians and audiences alike. He stands as a reminder of an era when a king's reputation was forged not in councils or courts, but on the battlefield.